Hello, and welcome to another B&T unboxing video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the video quality of the Super NT versus the Super Nintendo when it comes to HDMI output. The Super Nintendo has two options to get HD image from it, and then of course the Analog has one. We'll start with the Super Nintendo and work our way over. First, let me explain what we have here. So this is the original Super Nintendo. One of these methods will only work on this console, the Super Nintendo Mini, the one that came out a few years later, I believe 94, 95 time frame. The second method will not work on this. The first method will. So what we have is we have two converter boxes of sorts. First is this one. It's just an RCA or composite input, output HDMI. No. And you can select 720 or 1080. It gets its power through USB. With this one, I went with 720 resolution simply because I figure scaling up the signal, let's just take it one step lower, maybe the image quality will be a little bit better than 1080. But since it's really stretching it a lot from the standard console's resolution output, it probably doesn't matter. It's going to look kind of crappy regardless. But it is a way to get it onto an HD TV. The sole purpose that I got this wasn't to put on my HD TV. It was actually, I have a Blackmagic video capture card, and it will only accept a signal that is 480p or higher. The Super Nintendo and a lot of the consoles from that time frame are only 240p. So I had to get something. This right here was about $10 off Amazon. For $10, it does the job. It wasn't anything great. It wasn't bad. Little note: if you do get one, or if you have one and it doesn't work all the time, if you have it on for more than a few hours, it'll pretty much just freeze up and lock up. So you have to unplug it for a few seconds, and then you're good to go. The next option is a little bit bigger. This one's actually a metal case. And this is the HD video converter Scart to HDMI. Now, Scart was a connector that European countries and probably even Japan, I'm not sure, looks like this, like that, and it essentially had a full RGB signal from the Super Nintendo, or from the Sega Genesis or Master System, whatever. It had a full RGB signal, and you could get a better. In Europe, they had better image quality than we had because we had just a single yellow wire, and they had red, green, and blue on their own channel. And to do it with a Super Nintendo, you have to get this cable. It's Scart on one side, and then the Nintendo connector on the other side. And this will only work with an unmodified first-gen Super Nintendo. If you have a modified Super Nintendo Mini to output RGB, it may work with the Scart cables. I do not know. Someone else will probably comment on that. Also scaled it to 720 to keep things consistent, so I don't have to change my settings. But it's really cool. You can change 720, 1080, PAL, NTSC. There's a whole bunch of little features on it. It's essentially a no-name brand. Again, I got off Amazon. This was about $35, and the image quality was quite a bit better. Biggest difference I noticed was this: the video from this was brighter, whereas this guy, the background stuff was just pretty much pure black. With this, you could see there was stuff back there. So normal gameplay, the difference between these two, it wouldn't really affect gameplay, but seeing what is in the scene other than just dark, this was a lot better. Again, will only work with the first gen Super Nintendo, and you will have to get the Scart cable. Both of these are on Amazon, so shouldn't be a problem. And then lastly, we have the Super NT, which cranks the quality up a lot better. But I'm going to compare them, all three of them, so we can see, is it a lot better? Is it a little better? The game that we're going to be, the scene that we're going to be taking a look at is Donkey Kong Country 2. It's the first level. Now, the first scene that we're seeing is off of the RCA to HDMI converter box. You can see there's a map, and when you walk over the map, you kind of have an overview of what's going on in this game, and there's a balloon over to the side so you can get extra life. You can kind of make out there looks like there's a picture in the corner, and I think it's just because the little box is just cranking the resolution up. It's not doing anything. It's not actually scaling it correctly. It's just going, taking whatever you throw at it and making it 720. And the quality has suffered tremendously. Now let's take a look at the same captain's quarters, but with the Scart. Now with this one, we can see a lot more definition and color. The room is much lighter. You can actually see there's a picture. You can see what is the picture in the background. You can see there's stuff, looks like cannonballs underneath the windows. There's a chandelier, there's a couple of rolled up what appear to be maps, a sword on the ground. You can see this shadowing effect going on the ground, on the floor of these quarters. It's a tremendous jump from just doing RCA to HDMI. If you have no other options and you have the first gen Super Nintendo, I highly recommend getting the Scart converter box with the Scart cable. It is leaps and bounds better. Now if we take a look at the analog, again, same scene, keep everything consistent, you notice that, or it becomes clear that the Scart converter box is giving everything a slight red hue. The best way to describe it is the analog one picture almost looks natural, looks neutral. At first glance looks fine, but when you actually compare the two images, you notice that it's a little bit red hue going on, whereas the analog one is more of a brown and tans, which is what you would expect a floor to be. The one downside is because you're seeing the full quality of the game, it looks kind of muddy. I mean, there's these different hues and shades going on the ground. It looks very muddy, especially when you compare it to like Super Mario World. And I think what's going on is, it's not that the game is crappy. I think the developers of the game were pushing the envelope to the extreme, and they were putting shadow effects down. So far, the analog looks better, but the quality jump between the analog and the Scart converter doesn't seem to be that significant. Now, the analog is one console, and the Scart converter is the Super Nintendo, the Scart cable, the Scart converter, and then HDMI cable. So it's a lot more pieces. Oh, and there's also a power supply for the converter. But it's definitely a massive jump from just RCA, and then the analog takes it one step further.